I noticed that when I would go into a store, depending on what store I would go into, people would watch me more closely, and make me a little uncomfortable. So when you all would go into stores, especially if you were coming with me, I would tell you don't touch anything because we didn't want you to break it. But yes, and you were black and we didn't want someone to accuse you of stealing something, just because you were touching it or looking at it or whatever. But yes, that was the reason why, because you were dark skinned.
Welcome to yet another exciting episode of Time Well Spent with Ronald, the podcast that nobody asked for, yet somebody is listening to. I'm Ronald, aka It's Big Ron. Let's get started. We're continuing our series this week about race, specifically talking about biracial people and interracial relationships. It seemed prudent this week to take a step back and talk a little bit about blackness and raising black children. To do that, I brought in an expert.
Hello, it's Peggy Lee.
That, of course, is fan favorite Peggy Lee, also known as my mom. So my mother is here to talk a little bit about what it means to teach a child to be black. A lot of the perspective that I have on race can be attributed to the way that my parents raised me. So I thought that she would bring some fresh insight to some of the things that black parents think about when raising their children.
Well, I was very cognizant of the fact that being black children, they were going to be treated differently. So I had that in mind. In raising you in Maryland, your father and I had that in mind, that you were going to be treated differently. You would have different experiences. So we had to kind of like prepare you how to navigate it, train you on how to do certain things, how to respect authority.
When I was a younger child, I used to think my mother was a little bit antiquated in her thoughts because there's no way in the world that racism could still be the problem that it was for her today. However, the older I got, the more I realized that she was right on the money in teaching me the way that she did about race relations. In the opening clip, my mom talked a little bit about how her experiences shaped the guiding of me and my sister's experience when it came to interacting with people in positions of authority. However, it would be easy to think that she was only talking about police officers, teachers, principals, but in general, my mother was concerned about any time that we could deal with someone who could get us in any sort of trouble. In this case, she also meant shop owners, 7-Eleven clerks, people at Macy's, malls, what have you. In this next story, my mom talks a little bit about an interaction that her and my sister had when they were shopping together years ago.
As a matter of fact, even after you guys became teenagers, and Marilyn and I used to go shopping a lot. We didn't have a lot of money, but we would go shopping and we would go in stores and try stuff on, and we would then eat French fries and watch the people walk by. And it's one particular instance, we were out at Tyson's Corner. I'm thinking the one with the, not the high end side, but the other one. I think it's Galleria.
Yeah. I think they call it plain old Tyson's for Negroes.
Okay, but anyway, so we were in there. We went into a candy store, a simple candy store with, bins of candy. And we were walking around in there looking around. And there was a lady behind the desk, and Marilyn touched something, right? And the lady, and we kind of had separated, and Marilyn touched something and was looking at something. And the lady yelled from behind the counter, "If you're not going to pay for that, put that down. If you're going to," something like along those lines, right? And I remember being livid. I said, who are you talking to? She's not going to steal anything from us. I remember getting into this verbal conversation with them, and I had to, get control of myself. Come on, Marilyn, let's go. And I came out of the store. But it was the way she yelled at Marilyn, and everyone in the store kind of looked at us, right? Everybody else being non-black looked at us, and it was embarrassing. Yeah. Because immediately everybody's thinking, ooh, what are they doing?
Yeah. So while my mother found it embarrassing that this incident happened to her and my sister in the candy store, my mother's reaction was very historical. It was something that came from the way that she was treated as a child and the way that she viewed her child being treated because of the way that she looked, or rather because of the way she was perceived. My mother goes a little bit into depth about the history of this mistreatment amongst her and her family and how that affected her outlook on her children.
I know how I was treated growing up as a black female. I know how I was treated. I know how my parents were treated. I know how their parents were treated. So I wanted to protect you all and shield you all from some things, right? So there were times when, and of course that's going to affect the way that I raise you. I'm black, I'm going to tell you that you're not going to get the same advantages or the same benefit of the doubt as someone else does. You're going to have to work that much harder. You're going to have to prove yourself. Someone gives 100%, you're going to have to give 200% just because you are black. So I would tell you those types of things, right? Your father would tell you those types of work hard, those types of things. That's what we said.
And now that I'm thinking about it, I don't remember you guys always referencing our race as much as referencing the lesson a lot. So it was very much like, you need to work hard. You need to get that done. You need to let them know that you're not. And now as an adult, I know why you were saying it. And I think as we got older, race became like, it was like, hey, you're black. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I'm thinking teenage, college, that's when it was like, hey, and you never actually said this, but there are more things along the lines of, all right, well, don't forget you're black when you go out there.
Right.
But I think when we were younger, it was just very much implied.
Right. And I don't think, and we didn't. No, we didn't. I'm going to say something that my father said to me when we were coming north. He said this to me, and I kind of like brushed it off on the back of my head. But now here that I'm older and we've been here 20 some odd years up here in the north, I would call it north, but it's actually east. He said to me, remember something. He said, in the South, they don't like you, and you know they don't like you. He said, in the North, they don't like you, but they pretend like they do. So when he said that to me, I kind of, Dad, what in the world, But now that I've been here a while and we've been in this one stationary place for this long time, I really understand what he's saying. And as we were training you guys, we wanted you to be the best you could be. We wanted you to excel in everything. That's what we wanted for you. And that's what we tried to instill in you. If there was a disagreement, if something went off at school, we were there fighting for you guys and saying, well, in the principal's office, I remember one time when you guys got into some disagreement on the bus, and we went into the office and we were sitting there, and she was saying, well, Ronald and Marilyn did this, and Ronald and Marilyn did that, and Ronald and Marilyn. And I said, well, did they tell you about it? Well, I said, well, let me explain to you. I said, when our children come to us and they tell us something is going on, we make it a practice of listening to our children and assessing the situation. I remember saying that. And then your dad said to me later on, said, man, I was so proud when you said children. You didn't say kids.
Yeah. I think I might remember this incident. Yeah. I think I remember you saying this.
Yes. And so we were always there to defend you guys, to help you guys navigate through things. And we didn't want you to be mistreated because of your color. Mm-hmm. We didn't want that. We wanted you to be so smart and so brilliant that they wouldn't even see that. But of course, the society that we're living in, and I think I heard you say it, is that they don't see your brilliance right away. What they see right away and immediate is your color. So they don't give you the benefit of the doubt until you open up your mouth. And even then, it's a little iffy.
It is an important thing to point out to a kid that, or particularly a kid that doesn't look white, because that's ultimately what it comes down to. If you don't look white, then you're not going to get treated that way.
If you don't look white, you're not going to get treated that way. I thought it was important to revisit Alex's interview from the first part of this series, where he talked more about himself being biracial. He brings up a good point, which my mom seems to be making this entire episode, which is that if you don't look white, you're not going to be treated as such. I think this is the theme that seems to be echoing when it comes to black parents raising black children. This is an important time to bring Alex back in. At this point in the interview, I asked him, does whiteness get lost in the mix? And at what point do we teach biracial kids about whiteness as a construct?
I'm really unsure at this point, I think, when it would be appropriate to emphasize that to a kid. Either because I really don't know when a kid is equipped to understand that, or if even mentioning it at a particular time, it could be detrimental. You don't want to impose this a prejudice where none would have existed otherwise, but at the same time, you want to equip them to defend themselves against the prejudices that are undoubtedly going to come in their direction. The answer is I really don't know. I'm not sure how I would approach that yet. And I think that is closely linked to the question, I think, of what any non-white person is going to do for their child in terms of explaining to them whiteness. Obviously, there are variations. It's not the same to be a biracial man in America as it is to be a black man in America or anything along those lines. But it's I really don't know.
And because we don't know, this seemed like a good time to bring in another set of voices to talk a little bit about their experiences navigating being in an interracial relationship and now raising a biracial child. All that and more next week. Time Well Spent is a production of Oh It's Big Ron Studios. Creative support from Mass Potential and Ben Schallenberger. Theme music provided by royalty-free music from Ben Sound. Outro music provided by Michael Corte. Also, check out Michael Corte's video Gaga for Rent on ohitsbigron.com. Special thanks to Peggy Lee Young and Alex Vaccarino. If you want to comment about the show, follow me on Twitter at ohitsbigron. That's at OHITSBIGRON. Time Well Spent will return next week. Thanks for listening.
Justice, kindness.
Say toast.
Toast.
Penelope Cruz.
Penelope Cruz.
Ha ha. Go like.
No.
Get as loud as you can.
I'm not doing that.
I need to check your.
I'm not doing that.
I have to check.
Ronald.
All right, that's fine.
Thank you.